So, welcome back. I am joined here with Kristopher Marks. He is the founder and CEO of Vive Mental Health, an organization that supports workplaces and communities across Canada through specialized training and community programs. Kristopher is a former tradesman and passionate advocate for mental health, both a keynote speaker and through programs dedicated to creating psychologically safe spaces that explore personal growth, purpose, and identity. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Katanya. Thanks for having me. This is really neat. What a privilege. Thank you.
Yeah. And Chris, would you be able to share with me your story and what led you to this work?
Oh my gosh, you're gonna start with the big question. So I'll try to keep it succinct. It's been an amazing journey, but I was not always a mental health guy. So I come at the work that I do now pretty honestly. And as you mentioned, I worked in the trades for about 13 years prior to founding Vive. And I kind of ended up in this place through a lot of personal experience, my own exploration of seeking mental health supports, and going all the way back to childhood. And in my teen years, I experienced some pretty significant trauma. And when I was 18, I was asked to leave home pretty unceremoniously and thrown into the world, very naive, and away I went. I managed okay for a couple years. I was the first one of my friends with his own apartment, so had a lot of fun, made a lot of mistakes. But at the age of 20, I found myself unhoused in Edmonton. And at the time, I was estranged from my parents. My teen years were very difficult and really leaned on my friends. My friends were my family. But back then, I didn't have any money, didn't have a phone or a car. So I was unhoused for about 6 weeks, and it was enough time to really humble me. It was pretty scary and lonely, and coming from a pretty middle class upbringing. I went to high school in Sherwood Park. It was quite the fall from grace, and there was a lot of experiences just within that time period that really stuck with me. But I hit rock bottom mentally for sure. And at 20, I attempted to take my own life, and that sort of started kind of a rebound into you know finding connection. It was a real journey through masking, and I kept a lot of secrets for a lot of years and didn't really open up to anybody about what I'd gone through until I was 31. So that was when I was having trouble sleeping. I suffered from night terrors since I was a teen, and my parents were very stoic, and I was a high achieving kid. Like I was an honors student up until high school, played hockey, very, very much into like pushing myself. So I pushed through a lot of quiet experiences and painful ones before I decided that, I think I need to get some help. And I canceled my first 3 or 4 therapy appointments from the parking lot. And when I finally went, just as a quick story about what this was like, I found a guy in the phone book that dates me, but who was doing pro bono counseling for 1 hour once a week downtown. I drove downtown. I finally went inside, and he was the first human being who ever knew everything that happened. So there was an incident back when I was a teenager, and then my whole life since then, up until 31. And he was the first human being who'd ever heard like my full truth. And I was crying, and he was crying, and it was a lot. And at the end of our session, which I think we even ran over the hour, he said, "Chris, like, do you know where I work the rest of the week, the other days of the week?" I said, I have no idea, man. And he's like, "I work at the Edmonton Max prison." And he's like, "I need you to know that I hear stories that are very similar to yours in many ways from men who end up in front of me. And I need you to understand how remarkable it is that you're here, and that you put yourself through school. You're a journeyman Red Seal tradesman. You've reconciled with your family. You've worked through a lot of things on your own." Um, and that was the first context that I ever had in my life that I did okay. And I still get emotional like thinking about that experience, because it was hard, but it motivated me beyond belief. And I kept up with therapy for a lot of years and worked through a lot of things. And working in the trades, I loved it. I loved the work. Come COVID time, I got laid off like a lot of of folks and sort of hit that crossroads where I'm like, I really have a passion for people and music and arts and just connecting with people. So I decided to go back to school. I enrolled in Athabasca University to study psychology. I wanted to work in mental health, and that became like a long-term goal. And in the meantime, I founded Vive. I started a podcast like you just to connect with people way above my pay grade and just translating kind of what some of these resources were and experiences. And it really blossomed into this. I'm living my dream, Katanya. I built a company, we do training. We're very rooted in community. That's a strong value of mine. We have community programs. I get to do, I have the privilege of doing keynotes, and um, it's wonderful. And it's all collaborative.
Hmm.
It's wonderful.
And you're a recent TEDx speaker as well.
I am. Yeah, it was you inspired me. But when I started speaking more, I mean that was like a bulletin board goal. I really enjoy like it's a privilege to me to have people's time and be able to offer something of value, whether it's my own experience or some education, and to get the opportunity to stand on the red dots, as you know, is surreal, and it was wonderful. It was extra special. My experience was very special because I invited my grandmother and my mom, who had never seen me speak in the first 4 years, to come and see kind of where I ended up. They've seen me through every season of my life, and I'll get emotional at this part too, but it was very special. Those two women are my two best friends.
Hmm.
And, the belief that they had in me and everything they taught me and the values they instilled, it was pretty cool. So when you watch it, there's a moment near at the beginning where you can see my throat hit the bottom of my chin before I share a story about my mom, because she was sitting right there and I almost wish I didn't know where she was sitting, but it was special.
Amazing. It feels like you're really living your authenticity.
Yeah, what a gift that is. And I wasn't always like this. And you and I have been friends for a few years, and we've talked about our people pleasing seasons, and the growth coming out of that, and even the reasons why people please. And it's often rooted in trauma and seeking validation, and just there's also a drive in us that we want to be better. But that's been a whole, probably the most important journey in my life, is owning who I am and all the facets that make me me. And there were times when I would compartmentalize certain things. I have many interests and skills, but as a musician, some people I thought they only liked the rock star guy, like the music guy, and I would sort of temper this tradesman side, or I would temper the poetry loving art guy, and you kind of show up in different ways, and it was exhausting, and I did lose my sense of self, and it's very empowering to gain that back. So
Mm. And I'd imagine too, when you had first shared some of the most fragile, parts of yourself, I feel like I can relate to you in a lot of ways when you get that vulnerability hangover.
yes, absolutely. I even took a couple hours off after our interview here. Just you never know where it's going to go, and I think when we share parts of ourselves that we know are very sacred or very delicate, we have the lead up to that where there's some trepidation about what that's going to look like, how it's going to come out, and then there's the self-realization afterwards that like I shared a pretty important sacred piece of myself, and all the questions that come with that. How is it going to be received?
Mhm.
Did I provide enough context? Was I given the opportunity to explain the why and the nuance? And I think that's the most important part about our sense of selves, is that compulsion to explain beyond like the experience, because I could list all the things I've gone through in my life, as can you, but there's reasons and there's impact and there's just so much depth. And I think my curiosity, like yours, about people and not who they are, but like why they are, is the most powerful thing that we can offer others, is to just give them a platform to explain how
Mhm.
they are and why they think.
Giving them ability to use their voice. And yeah, absolutely. I feel like as I've shared a lot of my life, it's almost like it's surfaced out of my nervous system as I vocalized it. And that can be a really intense experience, especially if you're not really aware of how it's showing up in your body, and allowing it to just to
Yeah.
feel it, to allow it to just exist.
And it takes practice too, I think. Like I was very fortunate, growing up. I guess we'll move into this portion of the conversation, I guess, but like a lot of my close friends growing up were girls. And just innately they have such a gift of communicating and I was exposed to that. And I was always very close to my grandmother and my mom, and we would talk about ourselves. And I got all this practice communicating. And moving into the work that I do now, I can see, what a privilege that was to have that so many safe spaces to practice. And you don't always say it right the first time, and you can't always like sit in your bedroom and practice expressing yourself. You just kind of need to do it with people who will allow you to feel it out. And that's such a gift. But I do credit, some of these friends with opportunities like that. It was priceless.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, being that you're a podcaster, you did an episode with Dr. Michael Keller.
Yes.
You explored masculinities and what it means to be a man. How have traditional ideas of masculinity made it harder for men to seek mental health support?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. He is such a fantastic person, and it was a great interview. Michael, he has I think he has a master's and a PhD in masculinities or something that I didn't even know existed. So when we got into it, again, there was just so many layers about like colloquially what does it mean to be a man, and that's based on so much context like environment and the culture you live in. And here we are in Alberta with a very like blue collar mindset, and our ideal of masculinity is much different even in Western Canada than out east or up north, even compared to different countries. So if we were to keep things succinct to especially Alberta, I think, there's an ingrained hockey culture and a survival culture. The climate is harsh, and there's a desire to prove that you can survive both emotionally and physically where we are. And over the years, Catania, like I've thought about the evolution of masculinity, but there's a part of me that thinks that it was always very complex and broad, but it's where, as a society, we've allowed masculinity to kind of show these different facets of itself because every human being feels, and we all feel the big same primal emotions. Every man, woman, and child has cried, has felt joy, has felt lonely. So there's these social constructs that allow certain aspects of our experience to be shown safely, and others that we tend to temper. And I think that's maybe a more productive conversation, is to say that, like I think we all feel these things and experience them. What does the access look like
Mhm.
to share them? So Michael, he really opened my eyes to boyhood. And if you listen to that interview, um, or if you ever get to interview Michael, he'll tell you about his thesis experience where he went back to a high school and studied boys and their behavior. And it was the most fascinating social experiment I've ever heard, because men's mental health, like we're treating men because they were untreated boys, essentially.
Yeah.
And our childhood just has such an influence on how we see the world growing up. We have to adhere to things that we trust. And when our social circles say, trust that you need to be strong, trust that you need to be stoic, or, the old trope, the strong and silent type, is very much ingrained in Western culture. So having opportunities to explore, to use broad terms, more effeminate sides or more introspective sides really needs to be intentional, especially for men. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of kids are either raised by single moms or maybe with step parents, and how things have drastically changed from like just in regards to even just divorce rates. And when I think about now in like a very capitalistic kind of world, and analytics, scaling businesses, really trying to get back to the humanity of things with mentorship and really learning from your tribe, right? We live in such large cities now. And
Hmm.
so I feel like that can have such a huge impact. Even class sizes are massive. And so
Yes.
when it comes to like the development of not just boys but girls as well, and now with the ever growing, evolving use of technology, our lives look significantly different now. Sometimes I think it's like we almost have to reverse engineer and go back to the old ways of how we were living, or how do we find that kind of equilibrium where we find harmony between both? But it's such a big topic.
It's very complex. How much time do you have? Because we could
Yeah, I
we could
know.
go as far into the weeds as we can. And there's scholars, there's so much research into these social technologies too. But I think at the heart of it all, it's human connection. And I grew up on the cusp of like the internet era where we were promised and we were delivered to an extent like all of these amazing ways to connect. And what it created was this paradox of connection. And it's this desire, there's this innate human desire, like we need each other. We always have, and we crave that and we want that. But because there's so many modalities to connect and stay connected, and we always are, we have this craving to disconnect as well. So we're and it's a real struggle to be pulled towards someone and you want someone to see you, but you also need to disconnect so that you can keep learning about who you are and keep showing up authentically. Because when the pendulum is too far on one side, you kind of lose either sense of self, or you kind of do what we did and we start people pleasing and molding to whatever we're connected to. And algorithms can control our behavior
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot. It's very understated what the effect technology has, but I think we will always need connection. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right. I think that we need to an extent, like reverse engineer what that looks like and really understand the meaning of connection. That, quantity doesn't always mean connection. The quality of our relationships is important, and also spaces to like discover who we are with others and with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with technology itself, I think that's such an interesting thing, a whole rabbit hole to go down on. I can speak for myself when I look at my phone. And I do some social media management, and I notice how drastic the algorithm is per channel. But my algorithm knows that I'm a, 30 something year old unmarried female, still, and I would honestly say conflict. There's a division between men and female that's honestly feeding into my algorithm. And I feel like that's doing us such a disservice. But not even just that. I'm noticing that people are starting to recognize perhaps the over usage of our phone is having such a direct impact on our mental health and of human connection. That even recently, there was a concert in San Francisco that has a no phone rule policy. So
Hmm.
everyone put their phones away and they had a videographer capturing it, and people were actually having a real life experience. And so I don't know. I feel like once again, it's like, yeah, the pendulum has gone so far, and it's like, how far away are we actually moving away from our own sense of self, kind of what the true meaning is to be in this human experience, and like, how do we find harmony with that? And, I guess when I think too, where do we spend the most time? We spend most time at work. That is our community. And so it's so crucial that our internal work ecosystem is healthy. And for myself, I like to show up in those spaces and come forward to all my coworkers that I consider friends as a genuine interest of how are you doing? I am someone that you can talk to if you need to, and you can kind of pick up on that as well, depending on if you're more of a feeling person as opposed to like logical,
Yep.
obviously is based person to person. But
Yeah, it's even that little tidbit is I have so many thoughts because it's like you're right. And you're also right to make yourself available for people to connect with. And like communication is kind of at the heart of a lot of this conversation too. And the way that we communicate evolves all the time. And from a very high level, we could see, like everything from L and TMI and, shortening acronyms for efficiency. And one of the places that we've always seen humans kind of strive to be more efficient is our assumptions and bias. So the function of assumption and bias is to make efficient decisions. So we can take a little bit of information and make a broader decision about an individual or a situation. It spills over into our language. So everything is very truncated. We've noticed now with AI that we can kind of tell when something is written with AI. There's just we have that sense. Our antennas are like, hang on, like you're communicating just fine, but we're losing some nuance. And I think you're right. I think the pendulum will come back. I have faith in humanity. We get a new thing like technology or AI or the internet, and we shine and we push it because that's what we do. And then we sort of settle back on like our human experience.
and so given your work, with trades, construction industries, what other traditionally male dominated fields, what unique mental health challenges do you see men facing in these environments?
Great question. I think there there are quite a few male dominated industries. Like I worked in one for many years in the trades. And a lot of the tropes that we sort of joke about or we recognize are true. But underneath how we often show up in those, in the shop and with our guys, bubbling underneath is kind of this desire. Like I wish like it didn't have to be that way. And one of the best examples is the way that you get a bunch of men together with some tools and boots, and the jokes that we would tell are things that we would never say, the things that we would look over our shoulder. And if our mother's in the room, we would never say. So I was always fascinated about why that is. And when I work in the mental health space or I work with men's groups, I'm very honest about being complicit and laughing at some of that behavior and laughing at the wrong jokes. And I like to talk about why, because like you said, like we spend roughly a third of our waking lives on the job. So that is our community. And as a tradesman, I could tell you personally, I'm a proud machinist. I put myself through school. I was proud of the work that I did. I love to work hard. And many, many men see their self-worth and value tied to their contribution in the workplace. So to have camaraderie and acceptance at work is vital. And, there's all sorts of exceptions, but I mean, broadly speaking, our job is a huge part of our identity. And I think um, if we don't kind of toe the line, we risk being ostracized at work, and we risk having our authenticity and our identities sort of displaced, and to be told like you don't fit in. And it goes beyond like why I don't fit in this workplace. It's like I'm not accepted by the people I spend most time about. Um, and that I crave acceptance from. So that's a really long-winded answer, but
Hmm.
I think like in some of these industries, like it's being challenged, and I have the privilege of working in a lot of different industries and workplaces to have these conversations, and every time we can give, especially men, a safe space to kind of talk it out, they jump on it, and they have so much to say. And I experienced it too. I wasn't going to go to work and say like I'm having a bad mental health day. That never crossed my mind ever. And it's great that we're seeing a shift there, but there's so much work to do to make that like a norm. Because it's not that men aren't experiencing these complex feelings and the want and desire to show up as who they are, but many of them truly feel like they can't or they shouldn't.
Hmm.
And I think that barrier, as invisible as it is, it's probably the most prominent one.
Hmm. Hmm. And then once again, going back to like productivity, and I mean, I would say a big thing that comes up in my mind is organizations prioritizing, I guess a safe space for men to speak openly as well.
Hmm.
Also, really acknowledging their contributions, I think, is a start. I can't speak for every company or organization, but I definitely feel like purpose and belonging is massive in order for people to feel like they can really confide in and be like, hey, you know what, I'm actually dealing with a personal problem here. And hey, there's something really real that I'm dealing with, because it's a huge weight to carry. I keep thinking about specific people, men or women, that I know they're carrying a huge weight just because they're not sharing it. And you can feel it. You can see that it's like not an easy burden for them
Yes.
to have. And yeah, not everyone has the ability to like talk to family and confide in family, because maybe some of their issues are family related as well. And so
Yes.
yeah, just having I guess a safe space for people to be able to speak openly is super crucial. And so I think there's just a lot of opportunity in specific industries that could benefit. But
I think, and one of the most powerful ways to gain those skills is to have it modeled for you.
mhm.
So I've really embraced that role, and I'm not everybody's model, nor am I trying to be like a role model for all or anyone. If my flavor connects with you, that's great. If not, there's others that you can watch and learn from. But when I was growing up, I was kind of told not to have heroes. You make your own way. You should believe in yourself. And it's in a way there was a sense of like it being emasculating to look up to another man, because you're now putting yourself below someone else, and like no man does that. So I've sort of reframed what it looks like to have a hero, and I really admire people for different virtues. And after gaining some of these skills myself, and I'm always a student of my own communication and how I show up and how I be authentic. So that takes the pressure off me, but I'm happy to like go on a stage or go on a podcast and sort of practice in front of you. It's not me being brave. I'm just comfortable trying.
Mhm.
And I'm not I've done it enough that I know that there's minimal consequences. But now people can see what it looks like to share like a really personal story. And there's parts of me that I don't share that that are private or they're for my special inner circle. But there's parts of my personal life that I do share and I choose to. And even at the beginning of this podcast, I talked a little bit about my journey, and some of that is it's still embarrassing to say like I was unhoused and I had scorched for food and I was so depressed. Those have healed to the point where I can share those stories safely.
Mhm.
But at least it never comes out the same way twice. And it's all practice. So I love having the opportunity to deliver a keynote and to say, yeah, here's what it looks like to share something vulnerable. And you could do so safely and objectively. And, at the end of it all, like, maybe you look at me and go, I still respect the guy, or like that resonates with me. And it's not so bad, right?
Mhm, mhm. I know, and even the way that you're speaking, it's definitely a lifestyle, and I definitely think there is something about, you know, having boundaries, I guess, in, like, what you personally share, because that's kind of your experience to navigate, but I do think being vulnerable and being open is kind of a lifestyle that you choose. It is something with practice, and it is different, every day, every season, I guess, but yeah, I think it's quite remarkable to see how you show up in a room and how you really lean into that emotional intelligence, which I think is just such a superpower and so crucial because yeah, like you can have all of these very approachable skills. You can be very charismatic, but there really is something about vulnerability and authenticity when you show up in a room and you make it so that someone knows that, hey, that person actually makes me feel comfortable, that like they are a safe space. They are someone that I can comfortably confide in. And so, being that you do stand up comedy, you're a musician, you gauge in such a variety of creative pursuits and just so many different community spaces. How important is it to meet men where they're at rather than in a workplace setting?
First of all, I really appreciate all of that. And I have to add this before I answer your question, but there is a part of me that feels compelled to caveat, maybe these skills that I've learned or my ability to show up the way that you described with all the ways that I don't. And, the ways that I've screwed that up or I haven't adhered to my values. So, and I mention this because it's never a either or conversation. It's like this and. So I'm not trying to be the perfect model. I'll go first. And if I can if I can make you laugh or I can entertain you or make you think or feel I mean it's such a privilege when anyone looks at you as a safe person. Like that's such a gift. And I take that really seriously, whether it's in front of an audience of strangers or with a friend. And it's not always perfect, but that's a really special thing when someone looks at you and says, like, I choose you to be safe. I used to teach guitar for many years. I actually just picked up a couple students this year because I missed it. And some of these kids, like you mentioned earlier, like we used to send children to the home to their parents. If you're going through something, talk to your mom or dad. Well, we know now that a lot of those challenges do stem from the home, or maybe that's not their safe person. So to be able to show that like you have options, it could be a TikToker, it could be someone that you follow, or an author that you email and say like, hey, your words resonated with me, and this is your practice to share a bit of your story. I know people in the public space who read those emails and they're like, what a gift! Like, wow. And I think I had to mention that because it's an imperfect science, but I'm happy to try and I'm happy to fail or succeed. It doesn't matter to me. But I think it's such a blessing for me to have a company now where everything Chris can kind of come out. Like, I'm not going to lie, that is the most cathartic, beautiful thing. It's such a privilege. So, yeah, I played music my whole life. That was my outlet. I didn't always know how to express myself, but I knew that, like Pearl Jam and were writing songs that like were very deep and resonated with me
Mhm.
under the guise of art. And they were up there. They were rock stars and revered and validated. And it was so they were saying all their quiet parts, really vulnerable parts out loud
And
to this.
channeling, almost
Yes,
channeling their energy. Yeah.
with all this acceptance. And I'm like, that is Amazing. Like what a loophole you found. So when I played in my band, I was the primary songwriter and I wrote lyrics that were deeply personal. And it was so safe because I'd go on stage and I'd sing my truth and these people are looking at me and I'm making them happy or entertaining them. And I'm like, what a gift. Because I got my in out and I was also virtuously, maybe contributing to somebody's great night or something. So like our music program, Instrumental Health, is like my dream program. We're gonna found that as its own not for profit this year, and I'm so excited because we use music as a communication catalyst. So like if you can't find your words, that's cool. Like maybe there's a
Hmm.
song that says it for you. Maybe you can make your parents a playlist. Be like, Mom, Dad, like listen to these three songs. Like this is kind of what I'm going through. It's the camaraderie of like going to a concert and arm in arm with like total strangers and singing the same things that are meaningful to you in different ways. So music, I mean, you can sense my passion. Like it's an amazing tool and it's such a universal language. And I got into stand-up comedy a couple years ago, and this guy flew in from Vancouver. He was a psychologist and a professional comedian, and I did his workshop with 10 other just regular folks. And at the end of it, we did a show. So he wrote jokes with us individually and as a group and taught us how to do stand up. And we sold out this show in Nisku. And it was just regular folks. Like I had a little bit of like entertainment, but like comedy is like a whole new beast. And it's so intimidating and hard. But here we were telling jokes about our own mental health experiences. And we never punched down on anyone else, but like all 10 of us, dealt with depression or anxiety. And I talked about how ridiculous it was to try to date somebody with low self-worth, like that's exhausting. And so there's ways to access these conversations in a roundabout way that aren't harmful to anyone else, but can certainly make you comfortable. And like, why, I don't care how we get there. I don't care how somebody ends up in a place where they're like, maybe I'll talk to my partner or a kid about this. I don't care how we get there. So why not use music and why not use comedy and just like try? Why not try?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can speak for myself through my own mental health journey that, the creative arts have been such a massive expression. It's even just interesting, the the messaging that we see through art or film, the metaphors, yeah, the analogies, I guess is the best way to put it. And how that can resonate with people, and all of a sudden a light bulb will go off, and they, maybe reevaluate things or see things differently. And so there's definitely so many options. And I think one thing that really resonated with me recently is, something when it comes to myself with my personal development, not just even on a mental health standpoint. You have to get almost curious with your own pain. For myself, when I think about wanting to get better, for me, I really had to face where I was the common denominator in my life. But I think it really comes down to the first, where it's like, how curious are you with kind of the current place that you're at? And what kind of areas are you willing to explore? What opportunities are you willing to explore to kind of get there?
Yes.
And as you said, like music, absolutely. Like as an artist, I pour my emotions into the paintings that I do. And some people
Yep.
enjoy singing songs of hope or songs of a breakup, or those difficult parts of ourselves almost just need to be released in some way. And if you can't vocalize it, at the very least, there's got to be a way, whether you decide to climb that mountain, you do that hike, you run that marathon.
Yes. I think, yeah, and your passion as an artist comes out like your photography and your arts. There's something in it for you. And I think what's often left out of these conversations about like why should I go to therapy? Or like why should I change my habit? Why should I drink less when I'm upset? Why should I not be so short fused in relationships? We have to talk about like what's in it for you because you're never going to change your own behavior or inspire anyone else to change theirs if you don't talk about like what's in it for them. Like we're human beings. Like we're all out here trying our best. Like we're just winging it. So there has to be a benefit. And I love talking about that. And you described it so succinctly about how cathartic it is to get that out and to express. And that release, it's not just a thing that you produce, but it's the act, it's the experience of getting it out. I don't play in a band anymore. I'll perform once in a while, but I still write songs. And it's my form of journaling. And we hear the term journaling, and to me it's the umbrella term. Like there's dozens, hundreds of ways to journal, and it's just pouring it out. It's bleeding the wound, changing the dressing, and that's the benefit. So when I heard about therapy, I knew what therapy was, and I thought of like Frasier, and I'm like, okay, I got to lay on a couch, and this stranger's gonna judge me. Like that framing was there. You were talking about like being willing to look at yourself and challenge yourself. There are so many, in my opinion, there's so many micro steps to even get to willingness. Like you have to understand like what's the carrot? Like why should I even look? Because the easiest thing to do is nothing. The easiest thing
Mhm.
to do is to keep that closet closed. So automatically we're like, well, yeah, that's that's way better because it's the easiest. So you know, for someone like you to connect with people and to like explore these conversations and in roles like mine, not as a mental health resource, but as an educator and an advocate and someone who can model some of these things that I've found helpful, that starts to describe the personal benefit. Because no one likes to be told like you should or you must. Like I really stay away from those words. And it's not perfect because I'm my own worst critic. I'm very hard on myself. And I teach whole workshops about stress and burnout, Katanya, and
Mhm.
I've I've gone through it in the last 5 years of my business like a few times. And I'm beat myself up. I'm like, now I'm a fraud. Like I can't, how do I teach others when I, you know, default to this sometimes?
Yeah.
So you got to celebrate progress and really explain why. Why should I like go through introspection? Why should I meditate? So that's the I love that. I love meeting people
Mhm.
where they're at with that question.
Mhm. And just to add to that, I think about, no one really teaches you kind of like how even success can be stressful. No one really teaches you like the probability of burnout. And yeah, even the continuous imposter syndrome that you probably have to still work against, even though you are a leader in your role, you know? And even for myself, I've feel like there's so many people that come forward and they have really admired the work that I've been doing. And I still struggle with that imposter syndrome because the work doesn't end. You don't
Yes.
ever really arrive. Even the way that you were talking about burnout and you're talking about kind of where you're at, I always see this vision of like climbing the mountain. You can't see the top, but like, when is climbing a mountain ever easy? You're traversing and the altitude changes and the weather changes, and it's like you're climbing and you want to stay consistent on it. But no one says that it's easy. But then you kind of stop and you look around and you try to appreciate the view. And like I said, you got to know that the view at the top's got to be nice, but you're not going to know what it is. Like, you just got to keep
Yes.
going.
I love that analogy. And a similar one that I use is compass. And I practice this on myself, so it works for me. But I don't always have to know what the destination looks like you said. And when I go astray or I make a decision that didn't work out, I look at my proverbial compass, and as long as it's pointed the way that I want to go, in the spirit of the direction that I want to go, in the spirit of the growth that I want to achieve, I'm good. And it takes so much pressure off so that you can, hit a flat spot on your mountain and like take a look around and celebrate your growth. Like I was terrible at that. I'm still not
Mhm.
where I want to
Mhm.
be with self-recognition, and we're very similar that way. And like I'm extremely proud of you, like friend to friend. I've seen you grow, and it's amazing and it's inspiring. But I know that if I heard that, I would want to caveat that with okay, but I made mistakes, but
Mhm.
I'm not perfect, and I think no one likes to be put on a pedestal. And
Mhm.
to loop this back to like the men's mental health conversation, I think, especially in the media, we see men, just anyone of status. It doesn't have to be men, but like put on a pedestal, or said that this physique is peak, this is peak behavior. Keanu Reeves is the be all end all of gentlemen, and a lot of that can be framed internally as like, well, I'm not good enough currently.
Mhm.
And that's just our brains going, yeah. Like when men hear, and I hear this often, like men are trash, just be better, like be better. And the spirit of when that's communicated is coming from a very passionate, reasonable place. And that's important. But the
Yeah.
framing of it, when I even when I hear like, be better, I hear I'm not good enough right now.
Mhm.
And that's not a doing service to like our shared goal, which is like I think everybody wants to be better. and healthier and happier and be less stress. So that framing is important. The spirit and the passion and the reason why it may be stated that way, that is worth exploring, as uncomfortable as it may be. But the way that we internalize hearing the spirit of what's said,
Mm-hmm.
that's on us, right? And
Yeah.
we can work together to change some of that framing, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, the intention behind it. And once again, it's just like trying to diffuse this division that exists because we all need each other in this world to survive. And yeah, even when I think about like authenticity and how sometimes I feel like not necessarily by design, but I do feel like there's almost this war of authenticity where people are just desperately wanting to show up authentically, but people don't know how to. And it's so fascinating to me because I think, hundreds of years ago, it's like, yeah, there's a bear that's going to hop out of the woods and attack you. You can't
Uh-huh.
really be your authentic self or like truly vulnerable in settings like that. But kind of where did it turn where we couldn't be our authentic self with our own species?
You raise a really good point because life can sure look a lot easier when you wear a mask that really fits well. And what the byproduct of that is that your circle is very defined and generally like very small. So if you show up 100% as 10% of who you truly are, you're appealing to, the smallest faction of your circle and you're like that's enough. I'll keep that close. And then your worldviews narrow, your willingness to, debate and have conflicting conversations narrows. So there is a lot of like benefit to not being authentic. Super authentic people traditionally are outsiders. We called them weird or crazy,
Mhm.
and we still do. Yet we celebrate some who are unabashedly themselves. And we're like, look, and we'll put them on a pedestal and go, look at how them there, that's beautiful, be you. But there's caveats to both of those things. Like nobody can be their full authentic self. We are a society. So there's things that we adapt to so that we are continually accepted, so that we are safe. It's never this end, but it's allowing the autonomy and the agency of all of who you are to come out in the places where they're valuable. You don't have to be all on all the time with everyone. That's not realistic. But it's when you don't practice with the little bits about yourself that you love. If you love to knit or if you love to write poetry, go to a poetry slam. There's people who love that part of
Mhm.
you, and that's being your authentic self. It doesn't mean you have to
Mhm.
go there and talk about I play guitar and I'm in the trades and I whatever, I have a dog. So
Yeah,
authenticity is situational sometimes too.
that's a great point. Yeah. I always think about conditioning as well and how it's like, even as we're taught in schools and then, you even get, post-secondary education, you get trained. And because once again, we spend most of our time in our workplace, it's like you're not getting paid to be your authentic self. And as much as I would love a world where we really leaned on those strengths and we really
Yeah.
leaned on those skills, because I think people and companies would be incredibly surprised at how people would show up, like energy wise. If you're constantly fighting against who you are wearing this mask, it's extremely energy depleting and draining.
Yes.
I think we just have to kind of flip the script a little bit, but I love that as well because I think it's so true. I think it's like really investing your time in spaces where you can be your authentic self, where you get that sense of purpose and that sense of belonging.
It's probably the most important gift you could ever give yourself. And it's why I'm really drawn to like activities. Like I love to like curl and I love to cook and I like being in a shop and like building shit. And I love hockey and I love writing songs or nature walks. I like looking at rocks. Like we all have all these things that make us us. And I think we all want everybody to know, hey, look, I'm skilled at all these things. I have thoughts on all these things. I can show up for all these different kinds of people. I can contribute to all these different workplaces. And I love that you keep coming back to workplaces because we're seeing more defined roles, that script being flipped. So they're finding quality, multifaceted people. And like, I'm a big fan of Gen Z. And obviously, they didn't pick me to be their spokesperson, but I love that they're so self informed about who they are. They have more information about themselves than ever, but sort of because of the way they were brought up, they had to be multi skilled. So they weren't able to just like our parents, like go to school, have a career for 35 years doing one thing. And that's where we got the like master of one trope. That's not a thing. And I see a lot of companies who are like, you can do like nine things. And they're like, yeah, I've had to learn how to be front facing server. I've had to learn tech. I've had to learn, like, look at yourself, right? With all these things that you can do well. So they're creating roles based on the individual they're bringing in and sort of like relieving these structured traditional roles to say, okay, here's your menu. Check off all the skills that you love and can do. And that's kind of what you do. And then the menu drops. They find another candidate who could do more. And I mean, that's amazing. So now
Mhm.
you have this purpose and value and you're contributing in meaningful ways. And I hope that we see more of a shift that way.
Mhm, mhm. And there's so much we can learn from each generation as well, but yeah. Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, and so I feel like even just doing an overview of what we wanted to talk about, I think we tackled so much. So with that, when we give an overview of everything, what message would you like to leave, men in regards to leaning towards or considering perhaps counseling, maybe therapy, or just at least confiding so that they can address more of their mental health, see if there's any way that maybe they can, I guess, express it?
I thank you for asking that question. It's a difficult one to answer. I guess if I had to pick one thing, if you listen to this podcast this long and you're a guy, first of all, well done. This is a lot of conversation about sense of self and purpose and self-value. But I think every man, every human being, we've all felt joy, we've all cried, we've all felt lonely, we've all felt great when we accomplish something. Like it I hate saying like you're not alone, but like everyone goes through stuff. We all have stuff in the background and challenges and we bite our cheek and we say less and do more. But man, it's so worth it to learn about yourself and it's just inventory. So I have to frame it. I don't want to get too into my own weeds because that can even make me uncomfortable. It's progress, but it's really nice just to take inventory of where you're at. Like I do this every morning. I do kind of a nose to toes exercise. So as I've gotten older, I wake up and I'm like, does anything hurt? Did I sleep okay? What's the first thing my mind is drawn to? Am I tired? Am I worried about a project at work? And it's just information. So I'll adjust my day or who I interact with or the plans I keep or don't keep based on like constant information. And it's really empowering. It makes me feel like I have control over everything in my life.
Mhm.
So the things that I don't, I can kind of go, okay, I'll experience that when it happens. I won't worry too much. I'll mitigate what I can, but don't make too many plans. Just like keep your compass pointed towards, yeah, I think I could be better at this. Be kind when you talk to yourself. There's nothing anyone can say to me, Katanya, that I haven't said like 6 inches from a mirror. I promise you. I'm my own worst critic and I'm hard on myself, but I've grown in that space to kind of go, you know what, we're all winging it. And like, don't ever look at someone and say they've got it figured out, whether they have money or the job you want or like, it doesn't matter. It's just growth. And people will celebrate you for always trying. Try a thing. I never knew I liked meditation until I went to hot yoga and discovered that I hate hot yoga. It will never go back. I sweat. I had almost died. But at the beginning was 15 minutes of like quiet time and my brain relaxed. And I was like, holy smokes, this is everything. So just try it, try things, try a conversation, pick out your safe people. Not all of my friends get the same conversation. I got some buddies who are like, you're my escape, you're my bro, like we could just do fun things, we can just laugh, and I have some friends who are in those like safe spaces. We'll have like those deeper conversations. I have friends that I lean on me maybe more than I lean into them. And I like that. I like having purpose and value as someone who could support others. That makes me feel good too. So yeah, just kind of look at the people in your life. They reflect who you are. And
Mhm.
if they're not serving you, there's nothing wrong with them or you. But it's the mindfulness to make an adjustment and go, I'm going to do things that serve me. I'm going to be with people who serve me. I'm going to work on things that I enjoy. Life's short and it's just worth it. You'll feel so good.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. This has
Mhm.
been really nice. I love
Mhm.
our conversation. So thank you for providing a platform for people to share their thoughts and for your own candidness and this opportunity. So it's awesome. I
Absolutely.
love what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. And so, what is the best way for our audience to reach you if they want to learn more information about Vive?
So my company is called Vive Mental Health, vivementalhealth.com. We're just about to launch like our new website in January, but our three buckets are workplaces, communities, classrooms. So if you want to get in touch, you go to the website. We're all over social media. Just say hi. Like I'm in my DMs a lot with whoever. If you have a question, if you have something you want to share, how do you do this? Who should I reach out to? I got all day for you. It's what I love. So yeah, find me.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. And so, we're just going to wrap up this episode.
Thanks again, Katanya. Appreciate it.